Good morning, TCC staff. We are Team 11, and we would like to thank you for the opportunity to perform a penetration test previously last year and this year, especially with all the hard work and effort it takes to maintain this penetration test with lines of communication sent out to us. Today we'll be giving an overview of our most recent security assessment, and next slide, please. I'd like to give a brief introduction to our team. I am Jacob Rahimi, the penetration test team lead and the primary contact for Team 11. And we have Timothy Everett, Alex Bryan, Aditya Dindy, Mason Akara, and Julian Pena. Okay, next slide, please. So today we'll be going and addressing the testing methodology that we use for both of our penetration test reports in order to have a complete and thorough understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of TCC during our penetration test. And then we'll be going over our scoring methodology that we utilize to categorize our findings to provide a complete understanding for TCC for the vulnerability and business impacts of our findings we discovered. We'll then be going over the finding summary for our most recent penetration test with the inclusion of the remediations of our previous penetration tests. And then we'll move on to the overall business impact of our most recent findings and move on to the remediations, and these are the key areas for TCC to address based on our findings. And moving on to the strengths that we observed during our penetration test, and concluding out with conclusion and any questions that are still so I'll be passing it on to my colleague.
Thank you, Jacob. So for our assessment, we chose to utilize the penetration testing and execution standard, also known as the Pentest testing methodology, because of its consistency and efficiency, and because of this, we were able to gain a much deeper understanding of TCC's network and its strengths and weaknesses in terms of security posture. So the first phase of the Pentest methodology is the pre-engagement interactions, and this includes all questions and discussions related to the scope of the assessment, as well as finalizing all details related to the assessment before actually beginning it. Going into the subsequent phase, the intelligence gathering phase, this consists of the collection of all publicly available information on the target in hopes of gathering some potential attack vectors or vulnerabilities that could be used during the assessment. And then going to the next phase, which is threat modeling, is identifying the target's primary and secondary assets, and then mapping them to each and every possible attack vector, as well as the possible threat actors as well. In other words, emulating the possible vulnerabilities that we could find, as well as emulating the potential types of bad actors that could target the target. The next phase would be vulnerability analysis, and this includes an in-depth analysis of all assets within the scope of the assessment in hopes of finding any vulnerabilities that could be then used in the next phase of the methodology, which is exploitation. Now in this phase, drawing back from the previous phase, the vulnerability analysis, we tried the penetration testing execution methodology calls for the exploitation of these vulnerabilities in hopes of gaining further access to the assets. And the next phase right after exploitation is post-exploitation. So after unintended access is granted to these assets, the next step would be to search for additional vulnerabilities within the network and also on this system. And this also includes evaluating the importance of the system, which includes things such as what information is stored on that system as well as looking for privilege escalation methods and the possibility for lateral movement. And the final phase of the methodology is reporting, and this is ultimately the goal of the assessment, which is to give the client a deliverable that they can act upon and therefore improve their security posture overall. From here, I'll be handing it to my colleague, Alex Bryan.
Thanks, Tim. I'll be covering our scoring methodology. We use the CVSS system, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, in order to assess our findings. We use the system because it is free and open, and it is industry standard in this field. Using this system, we were able to create a quantitative metric in order to scale the severity of our findings, and we were then able to correlate that with our business, with the business impact of those vulnerabilities, and create the wonderful chart you see here. And in order to assess the business impact of your establishment, we were able to preserve the apologies, sorry. We were able to continue and help preserve Cozy Croissant's reputation in order to help our reporting of our findings. And I will now leave it off to Aditya for our next clip.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, now let's talk about the findings that we found. Team 11 found. So we found a total of 46 vulnerabilities, 6 of those being critical, 13 high, 18 moderate or medium, 4 low, and 5 informational. And unfortunately, on our vulnerabilities resolve chart, it is a bit inaccurate because on the Excel spreadsheet that we use, it was a bit misconfigured. But fortunate for TCC, that means there are a total of 9 fixed vulnerabilities out of the 12 we found in the previous engagement. And especially those that do violate the PCI DSS compliance regulations. Also, there are still 3 left that have not been resolved, and one of those being critical, which is blank administrator passwords on 4 of the kiosk guest machines on the guest network. That's all, and I'll pass it on to my colleague, Mason.
Thank you, Aditya. If we could change the slide real quick. Thank you. So business impact. This is what our findings, what we found would directly impact your business, and what those consequences and violations are. The first one we found is in your home state that your business is located, which is the NRS Chapter 603A, which just states that any data collection organization that has personal information must take measures to properly secure and protect that information. And we did find vulnerabilities that could lead to violations, and those could cost up to $5,000 per violation that we found. And continuing on, PCI DSS, which is the payment card industry data security standard, and which says if you contain any, not social security, sorry, if you contain any credit card information, you must properly secure it, similar to the previous one. And these violations can get a lot more expensive. For every 1 to 3 months you find a violation, they can charge you up to $10,000 per month, and 4 to 6, $50,000, instead of plus $100,000. Excuse me. Granted, this does depend on how many cards are processed and a bunch of additional factors, but either way, the expenses can be large, and it is recommended that these are resolved. And continuing on to the next slide, if we could advance once more. Remediations. These are the 3 main categories we found that can greatly benefit your network and help in improving your, security posture. So the first one we found was configuration. There were multiple misconfigurations found, which are just simple changes that need to be updated to overall improve the security of your assets, systems, packages, and so on. Continuing on is patching. There are multiple out-of-date just assets found, and simply, well, I apologize, not simply, but patching them to a newer version can greatly improve their security by including multiple improvements and just bug fixes and several other improvements that this can help your system. And lastly is policies. This affects your own employees and includes things such as promoting good password usage, making strong passwords that aren't easy to guess or be brute force, and just including other just features such as not leaving valuable information in easy to access areas. And that's it for here. I'll be continuing it for Jillian.
Thank you, Mason. Next slide, please. So we did talk about a number of critical and high severity vulnerabilities. There were quite a few. However, I'd like to take a moment to focus on the strengths, because there were quite a few significant changes from our last penetration test, with the first being encryption. We noticed in our past penetration tests that a lot of the assets use encrypted communications, such as the websites, and we noticed that in this assessment,